So hello viewers, welcome back to Biblo Facts, and today we are entering into the fifth session of Let's Complete the Bible, and we are going to continue from the 47th chapter of Genesis, where Joseph takes all his brothers and his family to Egypt. So before starting the session, I would like to say you that watch this video fully without skipping it, and if you don't have time at the present, you can watch it later after the live video is uploaded, and you can watch it in either 1.5x or 2x speed so that it may save your time. So now let us start the session. So Joseph took 5 of his brothers and went to the king. He said, "My father and my brothers have come from Canaan with their flocks, their herds, and all that they own. They are now in the region of Goshen." He then presented his brothers to the king. The king asked them, "What is your occupation?" "We are shepherds, sir, just as our ancestors were," they answered. "We have come to live in this country because in the land of Canaan the famine is so severe that there is no pasture for our flocks. Please give us some permission to live in the region of Goshen." The king said to Joseph, "Now that your father and your brothers have arrived, the land of Egypt is theirs. Let them settle in the region of Goshen, the best part of the land. And if there are any capable men among them, put them in charge of my own livestock." Then Joseph brought his father Jacob and presented him to the king. Jacob gave the king his blessing, and the king asked him, "How old are you?" Jacob answered, "My life of wandering has lasted 130 years. Those years have been few. Those years have been few and difficult, unlike the long years of my ancestors in their wanderings." Jacob gave the king a farewell blessing and left. Then Joseph settled his father and his brother in Egypt, giving them property in the best of the land near the city of Ramesses, as the king had commanded. Joseph provided food for his father, his brothers, and all the rest of his father's family, including the very youngsters. The famine. The famine was so severe that there was no food anywhere, and the people of Egypt and Canaan became weak with hunger. As they bought corn, Joseph collected all the money and took it to the palace. When all the money in Egypt and Canaan was spent, the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food, don't let us die. Do something, our money is all gone." Joseph answered, "Bring your livestock, I'll give you food in exchange for it, if your money is all gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and he gave them food in exchange for their horses, sheep, goats, cattle, and donkeys. That year he supplied them with food in exchange for all their livestock. The following year they came to him and said, "We will not hide the fact from you, sir, that our money is all gone and the livestock belongs to you. There's nothing left to give you except our bodies and our lands. Don't let us die. Do something. Don't let our fields be deserted. But buy us and our land in exchange for food. We will be the king's slaves, and he will own our land. Give us corn to keep us alive, and seed to sow in our fields." Joseph bought all the land in Egypt. So this one is a very tactical move, because now the government owns all the money of the people, and now the people also promise to be the slaves of the king, and they also promise to sell all the lands. Yeah, they also promise to give all the land to the king. So Joseph bought all the land in Egypt for the king. Every Egyptian was forced to sell his land because the famine was so severe, and all the land became the king's property. Joseph made slaves of the people from one end of the Egypt to the other. The only land he did not buy was the land that belonged to priests. They did not have to sell their lands because the king gave them an allowance to live on. Joseph said to the people, "You see, I have now brought you and your lands for the king. I have bought you and your lands for the king. Here is seed for you to sow in your fields. At the time of harvest, you must give one fifth to the king. You can use the rest for seed and for food for yourself and your families." They answered, "You have saved our lives. You have been good to us, sir, and we will be the king's slaves." So Joseph made it a law for the land of Egypt that one fifth of the harvest should belong to the king. This law still remains in force today. Only the land of the priests did not become the king's property. Jacob's last request. The Israelites lived in Egypt in the region of Goshen, where they became rich and had many children. Jacob lived in Egypt for 17 years until he was 147 years old. When the time drew near for him to die, he called for his son Joseph and said to him, "Place your hands between my thighs and make a solemn vow that you will not bury me in Egypt. I want to be buried where my fathers are. Carry me out of Egypt and bury me where they are buried." Joseph answered, "I will do as you say." Joseph said, "Make a vow." Jacob said, "Make a vow that you will." Joseph made the vow, and Jacob gave thanks there on his bed. Jacob blesses Ephraim and Manasseh. Sometime later, this is chapter number 48, verse 1. Sometime later, Joseph was told that his father was ill. So he took his two sons Manasseh and Ephraim and went to see Jacob. When Jacob was told that his son Joseph had come to see him, he gathered his strength and sat up in the bed. Jacob said to Joseph, "Almighty God appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me. He said to me, 'I will give you many children so that your descendants will become many nations. I will give this land to your descendants as their possession forever.'" Jacob continued, "Joseph, your two sons who were born to you in Egypt before I came here belong to me. Ephraim and Manasseh are just as my sons as Reuben and Simeon. If you have any more sons, they will not be considered mine." Hey, hello, hello. They will not be considered mine. The inheritance they get will come through Ephraim and Manasseh. I am doing this because of your mother Rachel. To my great sorrow, she died in the land of Canaan, not far from Ephrath, as I was returning from Mesopotamia. I buried her there beside the road of Ephrath. Ephrath is now known as Bethlehem. When Jacob saw Joseph's sons, he asked, "Who are these boys?" Joseph answered, "These are my sons, whom God has given me here in Egypt." So Jacob said, "Bring them to me so that I may bless them." Jacob's eyesight was falling because of his age, and he could not see very well. Joseph brought the boys to him, and he hugged them and kissed them. Jacob said to Joseph, "I never expected to see you again, and now God has even let me see your children." Then Joseph took them from Jacob's lap and bowed down before him with his face to the ground. Joseph put Ephraim at Jacob's left and Manasseh at his right. But Jacob crossed his hands and put his right hand on the head of Ephraim, even though he was younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, who was the elder. Then he blessed Joseph. "May the God whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac served bless these boys. May God who led me to this very day bless them. May the angel who has rescued me from all harm bless them. May my name and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac live on through these boys. May they have many children and many descendants." Joseph was very upset when he saw that his father had put his right hand on Ephraim's head. So he took his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to the head of Manasseh. He said to his father, "Not that way, father. This is the elder boy. Put the right hand on his head." His father refused, saying, "I know, my son, I know. Manasseh's descendants will also become a great people, but his younger brother will be greater than he. His younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants will become great nations." So he blessed them that day, saying, "The Israelites will be your names when they pronounce blessings." Will use their names when they pronounce blessings. They will say, "May the God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." In this way, Jacob put Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Jacob said to Joseph, "As you see, I am about to die. The God will be with you and will take you back to the land of your ancestors. It is to you and not to your brothers that I am giving Shechem, that fertile region which I took from the Amorites with my sword and my bow." So now we are entering into chapter number 49, the last words of Jacob. Jacob called for his sons and said, "Gather round and I will tell you what will happen to you in the future. Come together and listen, sons of Jacob. Listen to your father Israel. Reuben, my firstborn, you are my strength and the first child of my manhood, the proudest and strongest of all my sons. You are like a raging flood, but you will not be the most important, for you slept with my concubine and dishonored your father's bed. Simeon and Levi are brothers. They use their weapons to commit violence. I will not join in their secret talks, nor will I take part in their meetings, for they killed men in anger, and they crippled bulls for sport. A curse be on their anger because it is so fierce, and on their fury because it is so cruel. I'll scatter them throughout the land of Israel, I'll disperse them among its people. Judah, your brothers will praise you. You hold your enemies by the neck. Your brothers will bow down before you. Judah is like a lion killing his victim and returning to his den. So stretching out and lying down, no one dares disturb him. Judah will hold the royal scepter, and his descendants will always rule. Nations will bring him tribute and bow in obedience before him. He ties his young donkey to a grapevine, to the very best of the vines. He washes his clothes in blood red wine. His eyes are bloodshot from drinking wine. His teeth white from drinking milk. Zebulun will live beside the sea. His shore will be a haven of ships. Haven, not heaven. For ships. His territory will reach as far as Sidon. Issachar is no better than a donkey that lies stretched out between its saddlebags. But he sees the resting place is good, and that the land is delightful. So he bends his back to carry the load and is forced to work as a slave. Dan will be a ruler for his people. They will be like the other tribes of Israel. Dan will be a snake at the side of the road, a poisonous snake beside the path that strikes the horse heel, so that the rider is thrown off backward. I wait for your deliverance, Lord. God will be attacked by a band of robbers. It's Gad. Gad will be attacked by a band of robbers, and he will turn and pursue them. Asher's land will produce rich food. He will provide food fit for a king. Naphtali is a deer that runs free who bears lovely fawns. Joseph is like a wild donkey by a spring, a wild colt on a hillside. His enemies attack him fiercely and pursue him with their bows and arrows, but his bow remains steady, and his arms are made strong by the power of the mighty God of Jacob, by the shepherd, the protector of Israel. It is your father's God who helps you, the Almighty God who blesses you with blessings of rain from above and of deep waters from beneath the ground. Blessings of my cattle and children, blessings of corn and flowers, blessings of ancient mountains, delightful things from everlasting hills. May these blessings rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the one set apart from his brothers. Benjamin is like a vicious wolf. Morning and evening he kills and devours. These are the 12 tribes of Israel. So here Jacob gives a brief explanation about all his 12 sons, that is all the 12 tribes. So and this is what their father said as he spoke a suitable word of farewell to each other. So now we are in chapter number 49, verse 29, the death and burial of Jacob. Then Jacob commanded his sons, now that I am going to join my people in death, bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, at Macapel, Macapella, east of Mamre, the land of Canaan. Abraham bought this cave and field from Ephron for a burial ground. That is where they buried Abraham and his wife Sarah. That is where they buried Isaac and his wife Rebekah, and that is where I buried Leah. The field and the cave in it were bought from the Hittites. Bury me there. When Jacob had finished giving instructions to his sons, he laid down again and died. So now we are coming into chapter number 50 of Genesis. Joseph threw himself on his father, crying and kissing his face. Then Joseph gave orders to embalm his father's body. It took 40 days, the normal time for embalming. The Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. When the time of mourning was over, Joseph said to the king's officials, please take this message to the king. When my father was about to die, he made me promise him that I would bury him in the tomb which he had prepared in the land of Canaan. So please let me go and bury my father, and then I will come back. So the king answered, "Go and bury your father as you promised you would." So Joseph went to bury his father. All the king's officials, the senior men of his court, and all the leading men of Egypt went with Joseph. His family, his brothers, and rest of his father's family all went with him. Only the small children and the sheep, goats, and cattle stayed in the region of Goshen. Men in chariots and men on horseback also went with him. It was a huge group. When they came to the threshing place at Atad east of Jordan, they mourned loudly for a long time, and Joseph performed mourning ceremonies for 7 days. When the citizens of Canaan saw those people mourning at Atad, they said, "What a solemn ceremony of mourning the Egyptians are holding." That is why the place was named Abel Mizraim. So Jacob's sons did as he had commanded them. They carried his body to Canaan and buried it in the cave at Machpelah, east of Mamre, in the field which Abraham had bought from Ephron the Hittite for a burial ground. After Joseph had buried his father, he returned to Egypt with his brother and all who had gone with him for the funeral. Joseph reassures his brothers. So now we are in chapter 50, verse 15. After the death of their father, Joseph's brothers said, "What if Joseph still hates us and plans to pay us back for all harm we did to him?" So they sent a message to Joseph. "Before our father died, he told us to ask you, please forgive the crime your brothers committed when they wronged you. Now please forgive us the wrong that we, the servants of your father's God, have done." Joseph cried when he received this message. Then his brothers themselves came and bowed down before him. "Here we are before you as your slaves," they said. But Joseph said to them, uh, yeah, "Don't be afraid. I can't put myself in the place of God. You plotted evil against me, but God turned it into good in order to preserve these lives of many people who are alive today because of what happened. So you have nothing to fear. I'll take care of you and your children." So he reassured them and with kind words that touched their hearts. The death of Joseph. Joseph continued to live in Egypt with his father's family. He was 110 years old when he died. He lived to see Ephraim's children and grandchildren. He also lived to receive the children of Mashir, son of Manasseh, into the family. He said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but the God will certainly take care of you and lead you out of this land to the land he solemnly promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Then Joseph asked his people to make a vow. "Promise me," he said, "that when God leads you to that land, you will take my body with you." So Joseph died in Egypt at the age of 110. They embalmed his body and put it in a coffin. So now we are coming into Exodus chapter 1. So we are skipping the introduction. That is, the name Exodus means departure and refers to the most important event in the Israel's history. To describe those things we are skipping, and we are starting from chapter 1. The Israelites are treated cruelly in Egypt. The sons of Jacob who went to Egypt with him, each with his family, were Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The total number of these people directly descended from Jacob was 70. His son Joseph was already in Egypt. In the course of the time, Joseph, his brothers, and all the rest of the generation died, but their descendants, the Israelites, had many children and became so numerous and strong that Egypt was filled with them. Then a new king who knew nothing about Joseph came to power in Egypt. He said to the people, "These Israelites are so numerous and strong that they are a threat to us. In case of war, they might join our enemies in order to fight against us and might escape from the country. We must find some way to keep them from being even more numerous." So the Egyptians put the slave drivers over them to crush their spirits with hard labor. The Israelites built the cities of Pithom, Ramesses to serve as supply centers for the king. But the more Egyptians oppressed the Israelites, the more they increased in number, and the further they spread through the land. The Egyptians came to fear the Israelites and made their lives miserable by forcing them into cruel slavery. So they made them work on their building projects and in their fields, and they had no mercy on them. So the new king who had come knew nothing about Joseph, and so he treats. He was in fact afraid that the huge group of Israelites in case of war would join the opponents and they would come in opposite of them. So because of that, he treats them so cruelly, and the more cruel or more pressure he gives on them, the more faster they spread throughout the land. And so gradually the Egyptians came in fear of the Israelites, and made their lives miserable by and made the lives of the Israelites miserable by forcing them into cruel slavery. So then the king of Egypt spoke to Shifra and Pua, the two midwives who helped the Hebrew women. When you help the Hebrew woman give birth, he said, kill the baby if it is a boy, but if it is a girl, let it live. But the midwife feared God and so did not obey the king. Instead, they let the boys live. So the king sent for the midwives and asked them, why are you doing this? Why are you letting the boys live? They answered, the Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They give birth easily and their babies are born before either of us get there. Because of the midwives fear the God, he was good to them and gave them families of their own. And the Israelites continued to increase and become strong. Finally, the king issued a command to all his people, take every newborn Hebrew boy and throw him into the river Nile, but let all the girls live. So now the king takes a worse decision here, that he asked the whom does he say? Yeah, he commands all his people to take the Hebrew babies, baby boys to. He asked his people to take all the Hebrew baby boys and throw them into the river of Nile, but he asked them to allow the baby girls to live. So now we are in second chapter of Exodus, the birth of Moses. During this time, a man from the tribe of Levi married a woman of his own tribe, and she also bore him a son. When she saw what a fine baby he was, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could not hide him any longer, she took a basket made of reeds and covered it with tar and made it watertight. She put the baby in it and placed it in the tall grass at the edge of the river. The baby's sister stood some distance away to see what would happen to him. The king's daughter came down to the river to bath. While her servants walked along the bank, while the servants walked along the bank, suddenly she noticed the basket in the tall grass and sent a slave girl to get it. The princess opened it and saw a baby boy. He was crying and she felt sorry for him. And this is the one. This is the one of the Hebrew babies, she said. Then his sister asked her, shall I go and call a Hebrew woman to act as a wet nurse? Please do, she answered. So the girl went and brought the baby's own mother. So this is a coincidence because the slave asked the princess if hello. So